Right now, there's a lot of debate about the best game of 2022, whether it is God of War Ragnarok or some indie game, or of course, the titular Elden Ring. Now, personally, I love Elden Ring a lot. I have hundreds of hours in the game itself. I've played it and beaten it on every single platform. I found every single item and every single weapon. I'm completely obsessed with the game itself, which is why I am understandably hyped that we finally got our first piece of DLC. But this one is focused more on player versus player combat instead of more big epic bosses. But let's talk about that. What's up, gamers? DreamcastGuy here. Hi, hope you're having a great day. If you could like this video and subscribe if you haven't already. Now, this is being titled the Colosseum Update. It features new 3 arenas that have been built and constructed for different styles of player versus player combat. Now, you may be asking the question, why is it that we would need an arena? Player versus player combat has not only existed in every single Dark Souls game, but in Elden Ring it already existed. In my opinion, as fun as PvP was in the past, I think having a set dueling area, a spot with set rules, set organization, to me that's a nice change. The already existing PvP could get a bit sloppy at times because even when you were having some big fun skirmishes, a lot of times you would have people hiding behind trees and stuff like that because yes, that's definitely what I would do. Whereas here, you have to fight fair. But let's discuss the 3 separate Colosseums, starting with the Limgrave Colosseum. This has 2 separate modes inside of it. There's United Combat and Combat Ordeal. Essentially what this is free-for-all, which is incredibly chaotic, or team-based combat. Now, what's interesting about this is that you don't die just once. It's not about just being the last man standing. Instead, you have 5 minutes to try and get as many kills as possible. And I have to admit, it feels very, very different. I have noticed some people during the course of these new combat modes changing their specialization. During my couple hours of trying out these different Colosseums, I've noticed that people are rebuilding their stats and stuff. They're respecializing to make it so they can be more heavily damaged focused, because it seems like potions are incredibly limited. If you're actually going to try and be a spec that requires you to chug a bunch of health, most of these game types don't even allow you to drink a single flask. Sometimes they'll let you bring 1 or 2, but a lot of this is very much about that res and kill combat. And honestly, it is extremely freaking fun. Going in there, I personally have been using a bunch of bleed builds, which is very, very fun with my level 200 character, and also a level 150 mage that's more frost focused. And I won a lot. But even when I did lose, it was incredibly fun. I like the free-for-all, but I think the team-based combat to me is a lot more interesting. Now, let's talk about the Royal Colosseum. This features duel mode. This is straight up classic 2v2. It's just one guy against another guy. Whoever lives is the winner. Now, this is fun to me because honestly, it's the one that feels the most classic. There's no BS. There's no random monsters walking around. This isn't an ambush. It's a guy who's ready to fight, trying to go against you, and the best man wins. I completely stomped so many faces in the dueling. I've actually practiced dueling quite a bit, and I feel like a lot of these people are not very experienced with roll timing, and maybe they're just choosing to not wear their biggest, heaviest armor. But with my bleed build especially, it was extremely fun to just detonate people's blood over and over and over again. Now, the final Colosseum is the most unique because it features Tarnished that are able to use their summons. You can use what are called spirits to essentially have different minions. Now, anybody who's already beaten Elden Ring knows that there is quite a wide selection of summons we can get, from armies of rats to ghost soldiers to giants, and even sometimes a clone of yourself if you get the mimic tier. But I kind of love the fact that while you're trying this out, having summons in PvP feels so incredibly fresh. I mean, honestly, it's such an interesting style of trying to run around and think, okay, do I want to try and kill them? Do I want to try and weaken their little tiny minions first? Do I want to have one big minion to summon or a bunch of tiny ones? I lost some crazy fights of people beating me up with shields and stuff because they managed to just push past my minions and take me down before I could unleash my magic. I think this is such an interesting change, and additionally, there is multiplayer game modes that aren't just duels. You can actually do straight up big, sloppy, team-based combat with the Spirit Ashes. Summons all over the place, which means because they've brought back in some previous Dark Souls games, we did have 6-player multiplayer where it was teams of 3 facing off. They've brought that back. Let me tell you, it's very exciting when it's you and 2 teammates versus 3 very heavily geared people, really specced out, and they're using big summons of their own. It gets very, very, very chaotic, especially because, to go back to it, the limited potions makes this such a heavy risk versus reward. A lot of times these summons that you're trying to create cost you a heavy deal of mana. So it's cool to try and make that choice of like, all right, sometimes you're going to respawn, and when you pop back into the arena, there's a dude right in front of you. So it may be worth it to just try and snag a quick kill or 2. I really just seriously loved the team-based fights where a lot of times it felt like the tactics could be, well, more tactical. It was cool to have, like, if I was doing a 2v2 where it's me and a partner against another team, it was cool to have somebody that was more melee based, a guy that could put pressure and didn't need mana. With me as my caster build, it felt cool to try and play off each other, to try and ambush or surprise, because I do think 99% of players in Elden Ring are constantly using the lock-on system. So because of this, it's cool that you can, because they're so centrally targeted, sneak up behind somebody and take them out. Honestly, this DLC is free. It is a free update. If you have Elden Ring, definitely give it a shot. I'm still expecting a big, crazy set of DLC later on. I mean, I think this game sold nearly 20 million copies now, or maybe even over 20 million copies. So obviously we're going to get big story-based DLC eventually. But as it currently stands, this is extremely fun, even if you don't typically try out, that much player versus player combat in games. A lot of people seem to be specifically playing about level 125 to 150. I've done a lot of PvP with a level 200 character, but it does seem like the main bracket, you can kind of fight anybody even generally in your range. It's not like you can overlevel so much you can't do this game mode, but it is interesting to me that people are really managing to make the best combination of items, of crazy weapons, of really good talent specs. I think this game is so fun, and really, now, with this big multiplayer Colosseum twist on it, there's even more depth to Elden Ring. And after playing this game for so many hundreds of hours, it feels surprising to say. But what do you think? Have you had a chance to try the Colosseum update? Tell me your thoughts in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big old thumbs up, share with your friends, and subscribe if you haven't already. And please keep dreaming. I'm kind of losing my voice. I apologize. I wanted to yell about this, though, because honestly, it's cool as heck. Okay, time to drink some water and relax. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.